When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
You're tuning in to the Raised by Rentals program. This podcast will contain strong language and spoilers for decades-old media properties.
Join us.
Welcome, everybody. This is the podcast where we examine pop culture franchises of the VHS era, improv stories off the dome, and sometimes dedicate entirely too much time to recording, editing, releasing, and promoting episodes where we discuss in excruciating detail about fantastical topics that we obsess over because, like most Generation X and Eels, we've probably got undiagnosed ADHD. But hey, we're using it to our advantage to imagine how we might improve our favorite movies, TV, and games. I'm Josh.
I'm Mike.
And we were Raised by Rentals. Mike, is it true that you have an insatiable love for the dead?
It is. I was not expecting that opening, dude. You caught me off guard. I should have been. After how many episodes? We're almost at, 100 episodes?
Yeah, almost. Yeah, exactly. I think this is episode 96, but I forgot to check. I was so focused on setting up the recording and like getting ready with the new setup that we're doing that I forgot to even write my notes, and I scribbled that down like in a second right before we started, and I'm like, oh shit, what am I gonna say?
I was like, holy crap. That one got me.
Now the bar is set
funny.
so high that it's like I got to keep trying to make them funnier every time, and it's like it stresses me out. So sometimes it's better when I don't think about it, and I'm just like, quick, write something down, hurry.
Right. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So yeah, not only is this our almost 100th episode, like I said, I think it's 96. I can't quite remember. I was also going to look up and see, wait, how many Super Gusher episodes have we done? Because this is a Super Gushers episode, and it's the first one, I think, that we've done in season 4. Again, I probably should have checked first. But
I'm
yeah,
pretty sure this is.
yeah, this is. It's the first one we've done in season 4. It is the 7th one overall, which I feel like we've done more, but no, I'm looking at the list right now, and yeah, we've only done 7 or 6 prior to this. So yeah, anyway, here we are. Once again for one of our Super Gushers, what we used to call the off-week specials, but basically just a non-improv special. We had a little bit of a break, as I feared, as happens most of our previous seasons. We ran into some scheduling difficulties with the end of the school year and vacations and convention season starting, and my kid graduated high school, which is crazy to me.
It's so insane. I feel so old.
I know. I was like, oh my God. And it was very, very exciting. But yes, it made me feel very old. And I had a lot of relatives in my house. My mother came to visit for the first time in years, and that was nice to have her around with my brother, Justin von Strasberg, fellow Red Panther. But anyway, we are back, and as a way to ease back in, we figured it is time for another Super Gusher, and the opposite of a rental rant, where instead of going on and on, bitching about stuff that bugs us about pop culture and fandom and all of the bullshit that can come your way when you're a fan of all those types of the types of things that we're into, movies and games and toys and things like that. The opposite of that, where we just get to gush, we get to go on and on about how much we love stuff. And we've done some episodes in the past where we've talked about those sort of like hidden gems you find in pop culture, the dumpster diving for gold. We've done an episode about our own secret origins with Sam Granquist from the Western New York Horror Crew and Jerry's Closet. One of my favorite ones we did was We Love Halloween and Halloween Loves Us Back, one of our Halloween specials we did last season. It's actually one of my favorite episodes ever.
I had a lot of fun with that one.
Yeah, for sure. It's not an improv, but man, it was just a ton of fun. But yeah, we are back, and this time, Mike, you decided that you had an idea, something you wanted to kind of go on and on about, not only to gush about stuff we love, but to make it into a little bit of a game. So I'll toss you the ball. What are we talking about?
Well, I figured one of our oldest topics of conversation when we first started discussing things way back in the Denny's days, the before times, the long, long ago, we talked about zombie movies. And we got into a conversation about Return of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead and, fast zombies versus slow zombies and all that. And I think most genre fans have these discussions after a while. And I got to thinking about, like, what would be the worst or the easiest or, like, the best, I guess, for some people, zombie apocalypse to try to survive. So
Okay.
we're not going to go into like all of the movies because good lord, I know if we tried to like break down the movies, someone out there is going to yell at us for not including, something like children shouldn't play with dead things, or like something like The Dead Hate the Living, or some random obscure zombie movie from Italy, like, that I haven't seen. So it's like, instead of that, we're just going to talk about the overarching zombie archetypes. So you have like the Romero type of zombie, which we see in like Walking Dead, obviously, all of the Romero movies. It's the classic. It's what we see as the modern cinema zombie. Slow moving, eats flesh, shoot it in the brain, it dies. But when we let their numbers get out of hand, which we obviously always would because people are too fucking stupid, they become a giant hazard. Then you have stuff like, the infection-based zombie story. So your 28 Days Later, your World War Z, your Contagion, stuff like that, where it's like, it's an infection that, it's sometimes it's really, really fast moving, like 28 Days Later, like within seconds you turn. Or it's like, some of these other movies where it's like you get infected and it's a slow turn. You're getting sicker, and then you eventually turn. But you maintain like your athleticism as a human. So if you're a pretty fit person, you're going to be running folks down. If you're someone like me, yeah, you might be able to be outrun, we might be more of a shambling type, but
Yeah.
so you have those. But the key difference with the infected ones is usually there's either a cure, or B, you can just outlast them, because eventually they're gonna die. Like they still need food. They're still technically relying on the human body, like the human system. So you need food, you need sustenance. Whereas with Dawn of the Dead, they're just eating out of like habit. Like
Yeah, right, exactly.
they don't need to. But then you have stuff like Resident Evil, where it's an infection that also mutates. So you could have like, your zombies, your standard zombies, then you could have your fast zombies, then you could have your zombies where their head splits into monster tentacles and, becomes some kind of fucking HP Lovecraft nightmare. Um, and then of course you have the unkillable. So like Return of the Living Dead. The original, not part 4 where you can kung fu chop them to the throat and they die.
Yes.
But the OG Return of the Living Dead, where nothing can kill them. If you burn them, they're the smoke goes up into the air, creates acid rain, and makes more zombies. So it's just a never-ending cycle of zombies. And can you outlast them? So I thought it would be fun to discuss like what you would do in these types of scenarios.
Yeah, that sounds fun. When you're talking about the infection one, I immediately thought of the Crazies. I think that's a good example.
Yes.
Especially the remake, which I fucking love. I love the remake of the
Oh,
Crazies.
agreed.
And that's a good one where it's like, yeah, it's an infection, but it's slow, and they maintain their physical faculties, if not their mental, and even their mental to a certain degree. Like they're pretty smart. The Crazies are pretty smart in that movie.
Yeah.
As zombies go.
Yeah, no, and that I agree. Like that's actually what makes them so terrifying. Because it's something that you and I had discussed ad nauseum back when we were both writing comic books all the time. I'm sure you'll remember my zombie story that I was working on all those years ago. But one of the things that I always found terrifying is the idea of someone who's turned into a zombie, and like their humanity is gone, but their consciousness remains. So they're aware that they're hurting you. They're aware of what they're doing. They just don't give a fuck. So it's like, and that's kind of a Night of the Comet. We see that a little bit with Night of the Comet, and we see that a lot in the Crazies. And in the Crazies, I remember when you and Tegan joined us for the Crazies on Boogeyman's Closet, which is a fun episode. But yeah, like we discussed that a lot, like just how creepy it was that these like they kind of knew what they were doing. It's like, yeah, they were crazy, but they still were aware they were hurting you. Like, that's scary.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost as if it was more of a, it was like a mental shift, where, and this can happen to people for other reasons as well, where it's like, it can happen for other sorts of mental illnesses almost, right? Where what you're doing, you're fully aware, and you might even understand that, like, why am I doing this? This is bad. And yet it makes sense at the time. Like, at the time, it
Hmm.
seems like this is the right choice to make. And I feel like that happens in moments of like desperation where you're like, well, fuck it, I guess this is what we're doing now, and it's like you
Yep.
find yourself doing things that you normally wouldn't do when thinking clearly. Or, sometimes people are put into like life or death situations and they're forced to like,
Oh yeah.
they're forced to kill or to betray somebody they love or whatever. And again, at the time, it seems like that's the best decision, but to the person on the other side of it, like you suddenly become a menace, like you're suddenly the villain now, and that's pretty scary.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. I think you're right. I think most people can relate to a panic situation
Mhm.
where you've maybe made a very bad decision that you might later regret, but you did it in a panicked moment. Like where it's just like, oh shit, what do I do? And you just react. So yeah, like something like that, where in your mind it makes sense, but to the person on the receiving end, it's like, oh fuck, what are you doing?
Right.
It's kind of like in Day of the Dead when I always forget his name, but the Spanish guy gets bit. And his girlfriend, one of the main characters, fucking chops his arm off to stop the infection. So in her mind, it's like, I need to stop the infection immediately, and I'm going to do this horrifying thing by amputating your arm with a fucking machete, out here with no field dressing. And to him, it's like, holy shit, she's attacking me with a machete. Like, you know, so it's
Right.
kind of funny when you think about it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, again, at the time, it seems like the right thing. But anyway, we've already gotten off the rails, going down a side
Yes.
trail, talking about something else. So yeah, I think this is great. This is a good conversation, to kind of talk about, and it gives us a chance to kind of, gush on our love for zombie movies. I think zombie fiction is one
Hmm.
of those areas of horror, and correct me if I'm wrong because I'm just like a armchair critic here, but I feel like there's horror fans who like slasher films or horror fans who like low grade, B level or C level schlock films, and there's horror fans who like things that are more polished or more romantic or whatever. There's a spectrum, but I feel like
Yeah.
I've never met a horror fan who doesn't just fucking love zombies. Like they're like some of their favorite movies are zombie movies.
I'd have to agree. I think almost every horror fan I know loves some type of zombie movie. Now, that being said, there is a very hard divide amongst a lot of horror fans of what type of zombie is an acceptable zombie. So, like, you have the fans that are like, no, 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 Romero zombies are the only ones. They got to be slow moving, they got to be shambling, you got to be able to shoot them in the head to take them down. No other zombie is acceptable. And those people often hate the idea of running zombies. They think it's absurd because, again, they're half the time they're rotting. The muscles would be atrophied. They wouldn't even be working properly. How the fuck are these things running? A lot
Hmm.
of people hate that. I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I find the running zombie to be the most fucking terrifying zombie of all of them. Probably because I'm fat and slow. Uh, but that terrifies me. The idea of being run down by a group of flesh eaters. Um, but yeah, so like I agree. The classic zombie is like probably the most well loved and easiest to love, but I'm a fan of pretty much all zombie fiction. I like it when they change it up. I
Yeah.
like it when, like, I grew up playing Resident Evil. Like, since I was 15 years old, I've been playing the Resident Evil games. My zombie video game fiction is filled with mutating zombies, so
Hmm.
I'm fine with that. But yeah, there's most horror fans fucking love zombies, but there is a hard divide amongst them.
Yeah.
So this is going to be fun for that discussion as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you went there because I definitely was like gonna get to that point as well. So I'm glad you jumped right in and mentioned
Yeah.
that because yeah, and I was gonna ask too, like kind of like what your favorites are, but maybe we should kind of wait until the end. Let's kind of get through our little what if scenario, and then we can maybe talk about, we can gush about what some of our favorites are. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
I'll just say one comment on that in response to what you said, which is I'll save my opinion on which ones are my favorite or which ones I think are quote unquote like, true zombies or whatever. But yeah,
Right.
I gotta say when it comes to the fast moving zombies, like in 28 Days Later, which of course, some people tell you those aren't real zombies because they weren't actually dead, they were just infected. But anyway, but there's things like 28 Days Later where they're fast, and the Dawn of the Dead remake where
Oh,
I appreciated at the time how different those were. That okay, maybe we'd seen fast zombies before, but as like
mhm,
someone like myself who's a casual horror fan, going and seeing these movies and then seeing zombies and expecting them to act a certain way, and then boom, they're lightning fast. I loved that my expectations were just dashed at the beginning. Like I love that. I love because then I was like, oh shit, now I don't know what to expect, and that's what really
mhm.
heightens the tension. Whether you're scared of them or not, you have to admit, like, it really heightens the tension of like, oh shit, like, it, fuck the rules of whether it's a zombie or not. There is a monster in this movie that's going to run you down. you know?
Oh, exact. And that's the thing. Like, that's the same reason, like, in slasher movies, the reason why Leatherface scares me much more than Michael Myers and Jason, because he's gonna fucking, not only is he gonna run at you, but he and his weapon are yelling at you. That's terrifying.
Yeah, yeah. And see, and I have a slightly different but similar reason for being afraid of Leatherface is that it's like he's like anxiety right behind you. Like he's yelling,
Yes.
he's running, he's waving a chainsaw, which itself is literally running, and it's being loud, and there's smoke, and you know that he's fucking crazy, and there's other people in his family that could just pop out of nowhere, and it's like
Yeah.
and it's like, yeah, you could probably outrun him because he's often depicted as like an overweight person. Like somebody in shape could
Yeah.
probably outrun him, but you're exhausted, you're screaming, you're anxious, you're panicked, your heart is racing, you're fucking exhausted, and just the thought of having to run away from him. I mean, like I tell you, like I said, it's just anxiety personified, whether you think you can run away from him or not. But then there's like the boogeyman style slasher killers like Jason, where it's like it doesn't matter how far you run away, he's just going to be in front of you anyway. Like, and it's like it's a totally different type of fear, you know?
Exactly. Jason's gonna juke you out. He's gonna be like, "Oh, you're running that way. I'm gonna take the shortcut,"
Yeah,
and he's just gonna be waiting for you at the cabin. Like,
yeah,
how did I get there?
exactly. Exactly. Anyway, yeah. So let's get into this. Let's start with the classic George Romero zombie. Introduced originally in Night of the Living Dead, and then the sequels Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead are the most famous, even though there's been more of the Dead movies since those that original trilogy. But let's start there. So we're talking, like you mentioned before, they're slow moving, they're shambling, and I mean those in two different senses, in the fact that like when they walk, they're kind of tripping and bumping into
Mhm.
things. They don't necessarily walk in at a brisk pace directly at you. And
Right.
and most people, I think, would look at a zombie like that. You look at something like Night of the Living Dead, and you're like, just run away. Like
Right. And and see, and I love that, because in the Night of the Living Dead remake, that's exactly what they do. We took Barbara from the original, Night of the Living Dead, where she's a screaming lunatic, and made her this very competent, very with it survivor, where she had her moment of freak out, and then she notices how slow they are, and she's like, we could just walk right past them.
hmm
Like, she's the one thinking the most clearly out of the entire group, and explaining, yes, they're slow enough that if we're careful, we can just walk away. And like, that is what I think lessens the fear for me with the shamblers.
hmm
However, this is where they I find them fucking terrifying. They're relentless. They don't need to rest. They don't need to breathe. They don't need to eat. They just want to. They will
yeah.
never stop coming for you. So it's the same reason why, and I know it's a controversial film, but the reason that I find It Follows terrifying. It's the idea that
hmm
this thing, whatever it is, will never stop hunting you. It's like the meme that you see online of like, what would you take $1 billion, but you have a snail who is chasing you, and if it touches you, it'll kill you, but it's always coming after you. No matter where you go, it's always going to come after you. Could you outrun it forever? Would you forget about it? Like, that concept. It's
hmm
that whole, if something is relentlessly pursuing you, wouldn't you eventually just get tired?
Yeah.
wouldn't you eventually just give up? And like, what kind of life is that to live? So that's the part I find terrifying about the Romero zombie is I guess quality of life. How are you going to survive? And
Hmm.
then you have those, and we see it all in the Romero movies, but I think the culmination of the Romero style zombie story can be seen in The Walking Dead, where eventually the zombies are just background. They're
Yeah.
there, they're always a threat, but you're going to have to worry about fighting for survival against your fellow man because resources are going to become limited, food is going to be limited, there's going to be no kind of governing force. So now you're going to have to rely on the goodness of others. And as we know, just from living in this world,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of that around.
No.
So
Yeah.
I find that terrifying.
Absolutely, yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that too. I almost think that's like a different topic. Actually, let's hang on to that. Let's make that like another category. What I mean by it is, right now we're talking about the slow-moving Romero zombie. Brain damage to the brain causes them to to die again, and that's the threat. But then like there's another threat where it's like, okay, now it's just the apocalypse. Now it's just
Right.
the end of the world. And the thing about The Walking Dead that kind of creeps me out, and I don't really think The Walking Dead is scary, the TV show or the book really, but the
Mhm.
the thing that keeps you on your toes with The Walking Dead is that they're just trying to live their life in this like post-apocalyptic wasteland, for lack of a better term, but you can never relax. Like you can never let your guard down because you never
Mhm.
know when there's a zombie who's going to pop out of somewhere. And
Yep.
that's a different kind of fear. So
Well, and how many times in the comic book alone? I mean, I know they did the show, but how many times in the comic book alone did we see moments of that
yeah.
where like someone was sleeping and like they thought they were safe, they have a walled community, but a zombie got in somehow because there was a hole in the fence, and some sleeping bastard gets it
Hmm.
because they're unrelenting, they're always there.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So if the question is like how would we like react or survive, I would say like in Night of the Living Dead, where it's like the early days of the outbreak, or maybe even in Dawn of the Dead, when it's just okay, they're slow moving, they're easy to kill. I think like once you kind of figure out what the threat is and that they're not as dangerous maybe as they initially appear, I feel like that's very survivable. Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like, me personally, I think I would do okay. Like as a relatively intelligent person, I think I'd be the kind of person that'd be like, okay, fine. Like we can find a place to hide out. We can clear it of the zombies pretty easily. We can move past them pretty easily. We can stop them permanently pretty easily. But I wouldn't waste a bunch of bullets. Like first of all, like
Right.
you get like a blunt or piercing weapon of some kind, like a hammer or something, which again, that's another question we kind of ask ourselves here is like, what's the best like zombie apocalypse weapon? What would be your Lucille? But hang on, we'll
Oh,
we'll come
yeah.
back to that.
Oh,
You know what I
yep.
mean? But I wouldn't waste a bunch of bullets. I also wouldn't want to like shoot guns, which in The Walking Dead drives me fucking crazy because these guys are constantly shooting guns, wasting ammo, but also the noise attracts the zombies. And it's like
Right.
it only ever comes up when it's important to the plot, but like it happens all the time. Like stop shooting the fucking zombies. There's so many ways that you can crack someone's skull open. Like come on. um yeah, so I feel like in the early days, like yeah, I'd be fine. Like I think you would be too. But then when you get to
Oh
that
yeah.
point, when you get to the point where like you see in some of the later ones, like in Day of the Dead, where like there's more zombies than living humans, then it just becomes a numbers game,
Yep.
and you can just get overwhelmed.
Yep. And that's the scary thing because again, you have the unrelenting march of the undead. And if they're in huge numbers like that, how do you defeat that? All you can do is run. And it's like, sure, you can run, but you can't run forever. And where
Hmm.
are you going to hide? Like anywhere you set up shop, you have to be ready to pull up your tent poles and fucking run
Hmm.
because they're always coming for you.
Yep. 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 Yeah, and again, at a certain point, again, where would you go? Because there'd be, crowds of them, herds of them, like we see in The Walking Dead. That's
Hmm.
in the later parts of the story. That's the real threat. Individual
Oh yeah.
zombies are easily dispatched. Individual zombies are fucking nothing. Like even little kids can take out individual zombies eventually, again, as the story progresses. But it's the herds of the thousands or hundreds of them that become a huge threat.
Mhm.
Again, just based on numbers alone. Um, I'll make a quick little side note here. So there are 9 Walking Dead officially licensed novels, by the way. If you
Mhm.
haven't read
Oh
any of
wow.
them, yeah, there's 9. I read every
I've
one
read a
of them.
couple.
Yeah,
I read the Governor ones.
yeah.
I forget how many. Was there 3 of those?
There's 4 in that little series. There's Rise of the Governor. I think that's actually a 2-book series. Now I gotta look it up. There's Rise of the Governor, parts 1 and 2, Follow the Governor, and there's The Road to Woodbury. But that's not the right order that they go in. But that's like and
I
and
did read all those.
yeah, and now the main character's name, Sarah, I think, is escaping me. It's not really the governor as the main character, right? It's
Mhm.
this woman who becomes a part of his group, and she
Yes.
has a brief role in the comic book. I don't want to give it away, but like it's kind of cool when you find out what she does in the comic. She has a brief but important role. But then
Mhm.
there's 4 more books that follow her and her group of companions with other threats, and the threats are all like
Oh.
human, Negan style people. I didn't like them as much. There was one that and the if you watch the TV show and which I was really spotty on, so like forgive my like holes in my knowledge, but there is a season where they spend time at like a hospital where I think it's Beth who gets like kidnapped and taken there,
Yeah, yeah.
right? That
Yep.
that is based on one of the novels. Don't ask me what the title of it is.
Oh.
Don't ask me the title right now, but as I was reading the novel, I was like, "Oh shit! Like I know this one. This it's like the second to last novel." Um, so there's basically
Oh, okay.
eight that are about that character. Again, is it Sarah? Crap, I can't remember. But
I think it is. I think you're right.
I
Because it's
sh-
been a long
yeah,
time since I've read them.
I should have looked. And it's funny because I read all of them, and then I also read every single issue of The Walking Dead all last year in 2024. So you think it was relatively recent, but I think
Oh shit.
I think there was just too much of it, and now it's like I'm starting to forget. But the only reason I brought it up now is because there is a 9th one that has nothing to do with that other character and her group and the governor and all that. It's a story, a book called Typhoon by I think it's Wesley Chu, and it takes place in China. And I won't give it away, but it's head and shoulders the best of all the novels. It is so freaking good. It's written by a person who has familiarity with the Chinese language and the culture. So freaking good. But the threat, spoiler alert, in that book is it's all based on numbers. It's the herd that is the threat, and seeing how they handle that and how dangerous it can really be when they're given enough time for those zombies to like gather together. It is like I was on the edge of my seat listening to the audiobook. It was great.
Nice. Yeah, no, I need to go back and check some of those out because I remember the Governor books I got back when I had an Audible account, so we're going many years back. But I got those when the Walking Dead, comic series was still going. So I hadn't finished the series yet because it was still coming out. But I didn't continue on with the books after the Governor stuff. So that's interesting to find out. All right, so with let's just say Romero style, Walking Dead style zombie apocalypse. Obviously, any zombie fan worth their salt knows you do not need to rely on guns. Yes, guns are necessary, but they're mainly reserve them for people. Reserve them to use on human adversaries. Your zombie dispatching should be done with a non-reloadable. This even extends to how
Hmm.
I play zombie video games. Like anyone who's played 7 Days to Die with me knows that I primarily use a sledgehammer and a bow and arrow. Those are my 2 things because I'm like, I can make arrows. I'll do that. That's fine. But sledgehammer and bow and arrow are my go-to. But in reality, swinging around a sledgehammer would be exhausting. So I think the best form of weaponry you could have would be handheld hatchets, a machete, and a baseball bat.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Yeah, while we're on the topic, I'll just say my son Griffin asked me this question a couple weeks ago. He was doing like a little, make believe game with his friends, and he likes to make weapons in my garage.
Oh yeah, I remember doing that too as a kid.
Oh yeah, he's got a whole collection of like homemade like wooden swords and stuff. But anyway, he's pretty good at it though. But he asked me, what I would pick in a zombie apocalypse. Like, what would be my zombie weapon? And I gotta say, I don't know where I would get it necessarily, but like if I had my pick, I would love to get like a pole arm or like a lance.
Hmm.
I want like a foot, and I would cut it off short. So I want like a 4 foot wooden handle, like a broom handle, bow staff kind of thickness, about 4 feet long, so it's maneuverable. I'm not gonna get it caught on my, on things on the ground too much. With like, I need a good like foot and a half knife or sword type blade on the end of that thing. So I have something that I can stab with, something that I can, bludgeon with. I can hold it in either one or two hands. It's not too long and wouldn't be that cumbersome to like strap on my back or, put a strap on my shoulder or something like that. So yeah,
Right.
I think that's my go-to. It kind of fits all of those weapons together. It's kind of a
Mhm.
combination of those things. It's maybe a little big. That would be the one downside.
See, and it's funny you mentioned that because again, going back to video game logic, but in 7 Days to Die, like, Steve, listeners might not know our buddy Steve, but
Yeah.
he often, when he uses a melee weapon, he goes for a spear. So like I usually have the hammer, he usually has a spear. And it's for that same reason, for the range. You can actually like kind of play keep away. My problem with that is once they get in too close, you don't have the room to maneuver it. So
Hmm.
that's where I'm
Yeah.
like machete, baseball bat, handheld hatchets, because yeah, you got to get close, but there's that fear of like if you get surrounded, if you're like in a room,
Hmm.
you need to have that room to maneuver the spear,
Yep.
or the halberd or whatever it is that you have. But I do think that any non-reloadable is going to be your go-to for a Romero style apocalypse.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think Michonne in The Walking Dead with her katana is badass for a lot of reasons, and one of them is that she's a smart fucking person who picked the best possible weapon, and,
Yep.
and kept it for a really long time. And other people coveted that katana because not only is it cool and badass looking, but it's really effective.
Oh yeah, and it's silent and effective, and that's the thing you need in this type of an environment where noise is going to be your downfall.
Hmm.
You need a way to dispatch them silently.
Yeah. Okay, so shifting to the fast moving zombies, like the Dawn of the Dead remake style zombies, because we're still on the dead people, right? Um, and again, like I mentioned before, like that really caught me off guard when I first saw that remake, because I think, yeah, I mean, I'd seen the trailers, but like actually seeing it in the movie, they did a really good job of like, really hitting you hard and fast in the opening scenes of that movie. But
Oh yeah.
that that I feel like I'd be less successful with fast moving zombies.
Oh, I'd be. I said this before after seeing Zombieland when they were like rule number one, cardio. I'm like, well, I'm fucked.
Right? Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Like, I may not be that big of a guy, but yeah, I definitely don't work out. I am definitely out of shape, and I have those like the 40 something year old body creaks and aches. Like that's me.
Exactly.
I don't
And,
think I'd
and
survive.
and that's the thing. Like with the fast zombies, you have no choice but to hole up.
Mhm.
Because like you can outrun them. It's not like the walkers where you could just stay ahead of them.
Yeah.
With the runners, you got to find a place to hunker down that you can escape in some fashion. So I think that the key with running zombies is to get some place that's fortifiable. So we see in Dawn of the Dead, obviously the mall. Perfect. We see, and I know they did this in The Walking Dead, but I know they also did it in oh God, what was it? The Zombie Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse by the guy who did World War Z. Why can't I
Oh,
think of his name?
Max Brooks. Yeah, Max Brooks. Yeah.
Max
Oh,
Brooks.
what is
Thank you.
that? Yeah, what is that book called?
The
Zombie Survival
survival
Guide.
guy,
Zombie
zombie
Survival
survival guy.
Guide. Yeah, that's it.
He talks about it in there, and they did it in The Walking Dead. A prison,
Hmm.
that would be a great place to hole up because again, it would be easily defensible.
Yep.
I think what you're going to want to focus on in that type of a scenario is you're going to need to build spikes of some kind.
Yep.
So like the old, I forget what they call them, but the old defense against cavalry in the Middle Ages where they
Hmm.
would put the spikes in the ground that the horses would get impaled on when running through. So you would want to do something like that. In fact, we see that a couple times in The Walking Dead.
Yep.
Where frickin' Rick and Carl meet up with, why can't I think, was it Morgan? Was that his name?
The neighbor, the one who had like the
Yeah,
little kid in
yeah,
the
the neighbor.
show, he has like a bow staff. Yeah, Morgan.
Yeah, with
Hmm.
Morgan. Yeah, where they find him, where he set up that town, and he has like the spikes and the barbed wire traps and all that throughout the street where the zombies were getting caught on. That's the kind of thing you would want. You'd have some kind of defense around the perimeter of wherever you're holding up that they could impale themselves upon.
Yeah,
Something to stop them from running at you. And I think that would be really the only survivability in a running zombie apocalypse is find a place that you can defend and have a means of escape. So have some kind of
hmm
vehicle that you can get in and get the fuck out of Dodge if need be.
yeah, absolutely. I think you're totally right. It at first it would be probably a little bit of like, luck to get somewhere safe. But then
Hmm.
once you were somewhere safe, then the attribute that keeps you alive is not being able to run away or fight well or make cool weapons or whatever. The attribute becomes, your intelligence and your ability to figure out ways to, like you said, to, fortify your defenses, to, you know, make some kind of weapon, to organize the people that are with you, to have a means of escape, to maybe restore some of the technology that's available to you. All these things where it's like suddenly it becomes less physical and now it's way more of a brain power game. And as we see in a lot of zombie movies, but we see it in the Dawn of the Dead remake, since we bring that up, the 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 psychological battle, and again we see this in The Walking Dead too. Like, you gotta be the alpha of a group, or be able to negotiate your way through the politics that the alpha in your group creates in a way where
Right.
you can have a comfortable life. Like, you don't want to be at the bottom of a pecking order, so you need like the Riz required to to find a comfortable place in that new community, or life's just going to suck for you.
Absolutely. And yeah, and that goes back into the whole like the societies that build up around these types of stories because yeah, again we're social creatures. Most people are going to flock together for survivability, and then you're right, there is going to be a pecking order. There's always going to be a pecking order. Even if there's no government, there's always going to be someone that either takes it by charm or by force. And
Yeah.
either way, if someone is charming enough, people aren't going to go against them. So even if they're doing bad things, like you might have an uphill battle to try to like get away from that. Or if they take it by force, well, then, it's just as dangerous as the zombies.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
I don't think I would survive in that type of apocalypse very well. But now, what type of weapon would you want to try to defend yourself in that scenario? Because I'm going to say this is the scenario where I'm going to want a gun.
Yeah. I agree. I think when the danger becomes the human community that you've surrounded yourself with, and the zombies are just the siege engines keeping you in there, then yeah, you don't necessarily need the zombie fighting weapon. I mean, you could just get a hammer, you carry it around on your belt just in case. But yeah, you
Hmm.
need something to fight off those humans. And yeah, I absolutely agree. Against what I said before about, like, I wouldn't just be shooting fucking zombies all the time, but yeah, with humans, absolutely. Like, not only do I feel like you would need to have a gun, but you would need to demonstrate that you were willing and able to use it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because again, if you appear weak in that scenario, you're going to be at the bottom of that pecking order.
Yeah, yeah, and I have to say, I feel like, as somebody who who navigates you know uh, personalities and politics in my day job, and I think I do it pretty well. I think it's one of my strengths. I feel like I would do well in that type of community. I wouldn't be the alpha. I wouldn't be the
Hmm.
Negan. That wouldn't be me. I would be. I would. Oh God, what's his name? It's escaping me. The mulleted guy who like makes bullets in The Walking Dead. What's that guy's name?
Oh, Eugene.
Yeah,
Eugene.
Eugene. I feel like I'd be more of a Eugene. I'd be a guy who's like, look, I have some skills that I can learn that are useful to the community, and not to pat myself in the back too much, but I'm a smart guy and, I know
Hmm.
some shit. So I feel like I would be a useful part of that community. So I would cozy in close with, whoever the leader is. And I'd probably end up being a part of that, that inner circle. But yeah, I wouldn't be the Rick. I wouldn't be the Negan. I think that I could in a smaller group, but I feel like, in a real, community, in a real human society, some asshole usually ends up in charge. And while I can be an asshole, it's not my default setting.
Right. I see. I feel like I'd be the plucky comic relief that gets killed in the first act.
Well, we would hope you would at least have like the really creative death scene that like the special effects guys just went crazy on.
They do that thing where my vocal cords get ripped and it goes it stretches out.
I always like the scenes when people get like ripped in half and their intestines are on the floor, and then like they're desperately trying to reach and like put them back in.
Put it back in. Yes. and
Uh,
and I know they don't always do it in movies that when they do this, but my favorite sound effect will always be the ones that they've used in South Park for that. When anytime they have someone get like gutted, it's always like that, like they make that like bubbling sound, and it cracks me the fuck up every time.
right? Oh man.
Oh my god. So okay, so we've covered the fast zombies that can be killed by shot to the head and the slow zombies that can be killed by shot to the head. What about the infected? Where it's like, so 28 days later. The thing that I find so fascinating about the 28 days later, 28 weeks later, and upcoming 28 years later idea is that if left alone long enough, the zombies will starve because they're not zombified in the Romero sense of the dead walking. They're zombified in the sense of they no longer have control over their mind. Whatever this
Hmm.
virus is, it has made them into a rageful monster, kind of like the crazies, where we're talking
Hmm.
about like they have no like they might have their consciousness, but it's almost like they don't have free will. Like they
Yeah.
have no compulsion control, and they want to destroy or harm anything that's not like them. So in that type of a scenario, I feel like in 28 days later, again, we're back to the hold up, find a place where you can survive. And I think the struggle there is going to be food and water and trying to stay quiet because again, those fuckers were really attracted by noise.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um like the smallest little pin drop and they were like, "Rah!" They were chasing after you. So
Yeah.
um yeah, I feel like 28 days later, to me, that's one of the scarier ones. Because, like, yes, there is an end in sight, but it's can you get to it?
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
can you reach that end? That's where I find it terrifying.
Yeah. I think for me, like navigating a world like that, I wouldn't want to find the human community and hole up somewhere in a mall like in Dawn of the Dead, especially in the remake. I wouldn't want to do that. And you can't really hang out with the infected, especially if you don't really understand why they're infected or where it came from or what the true story of the contagion is. I mean, how would you know those things? So for me, I feel like I would be the hooded loner. That would be me. Like there's always that guy, that you sort of see in these zombies movies where, it's like the lone figure, cloaked on the highway, and that would be me.
Right.
I would stick to myself. I would avoid other humans. I would, really probably just regress into my own head and just try to survive on my own. Because I wouldn't
Mhm.
want to join any human community because I wouldn't feel safe. I wouldn't feel safe around the dead, but I wouldn't feel safe around the living either. If it's some kind of a contagion, anybody could get sick at any time, including me. So I wouldn't want to be around people.
Oh yeah, and I think in that type of scenario, like again, weaponry is going to be negligible because you have the fast, unrelenting. They're still killable. Like you can still kill them by shooting them in the head. Um, but they're going to be coming after you. So again, I think we're back to guns with that. But again, the sound factor is a huge factor in the infection movies like World War Z and 28 Days Later. So you would have to use it sparingly. And I think in that scenario, your best chance of long-term survival is some kind of like houseboat.
Yeah.
Some kind of thing where you can get away from people, fish for, your food, boil the fucking water and try to drink it that way. Preferably be in a freshwater area and not in the ocean. But again, create, moisture collectors, which that's simple enough. Just get a plastic bag and a fucking, bottle, just
Mhm.
hold it up and hope it collects dew. Um, there are ways to survive on a houseboat, but I think that the battle in that scenario would be, again, because we are social creatures, the loneliness, the idea
Mhm.
of being the last man alive, like that kind of thing. Like, how long could you survive without companionship of any kind? You know,
Yeah,
it's like, would you
exactly.
find a dog or a cat and be like, you're my buddy now?
Yeah, I mean, I think of like Castaway with Tom Hanks, right? I mean, he ends up
Hmm.
talking to a volleyball just because he needed somebody to talk to, and that would be me personally. Very specifically about myself, I would need someone to talk to. I end up talking to myself sometimes just because
Me too.
I think out loud. Like if I'm sitting here working and I'm like trying to figure something out, I'm saying it out loud. Like, okay, so if I take that serial number and I put it in over in this formula, okay, oh, okay, that matches to the reference over here. Okay, I'm getting it now. And it's like I'm coaching myself through it, you know?
Yep.
And I find I do that a lot. Or like, if I get creative, I mean, and tell me you wouldn't spend countless hours just coming up with stories in your head because it would be a
Oh
way to
yeah.
it would be a way to pass the time. It would be your best form of entertainment, and I feel like that would be a danger because I would find myself thinking like, oh yeah, well, what if there was this story about this type of vampire that did this or that, and I would start talking it out loud, and I pace back and forth. When I used to smoke, I would like chain smoke and pace back and forth and be, okay, so then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens,
And then you would be ignoring the sounds that you're making and therefore alerting the zombies.
Exactly. So yeah, I would be. I feel like you're totally right with like the houseboat. It would have to be a houseboat, anchored far enough offshore where you couldn't be easily attacked by the zombies. You also couldn't be easily snuck up on by humans who might see you
Hmm.
and just, see a payday in terms of resources. But you also have to be far enough away where you're not gonna. The talking won't attract either of those threats, the dead or the living. But at the same time,
Exactly.
I wouldn't want to be out like in the middle of like, fucking Lake Superior or something where you're so far from people or so far from land rather, that it would be hard for you to get back because you might need, fresh soil to grow things with, or you might you can grow plants on a boat, but like, what if they die? Or, whatever it
Hmm.
is, like you might need to get back to shore periodically. So you'd have to solve all those problems. You'd need some kind of a rowboat to get out to your houseboat that you can anchor where you can grow plants and like filter water and collect rainfall. And like I feel like you'd be so busy trying to survive that I think there's either you would just be so focused on surviving that you wouldn't have any time to just like daydream stories and talk out loud, or
Hmm.
that's all you would ever do is just talk about what you're doing, like, okay, got to get the plants and put the seeds and to get the water, da, 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 da. And then like you would just be this raving lunatic.
True. And that's the thing. And then if someone actually does encounter you, they're going to think you're crazy and put you down.
Exactly. Oh yeah, it would be lonely. I feel like you could probably have a pretty decent life, but yeah, you would be lonely. And let's
Oh
be
God, yeah.
honest, like again, talking about me specifically, I'm fucking lazy, dude. I know that I'm fucking lazy, and it's like the thought of having to garden. Oh God, just kill me already. I don't want to do that.
I mean, you're not wrong because I'm right there with you, man. Like, because my thing was like, okay, yeah, I could fish, but then it's like, oh yeah, what if you don't catch any fish? What are you gonna eat? Because like I'm sure you could sustain yourself on fish for a long time, but eventually you are gonna need some other forms of sustenance.
I know.
Um,
It's like when I watch The Walking Dead or read the book, it's like people are always fishing and farming and gardening, or they're on like boring guard duty, or like, they have people who like become like blacksmiths, or even people who just clean up. And like all of those jobs sound horrible to me. Like I don't want to be stuck in the apocalypse having to like mop floors and like, tend a vegetable garden. Like I got to be the person who's in charge of like the food stores, or like I'm not,
right.
or I don't want it. Like fuck it, I give up. Just bite me already.
Just open the gates. I'm walking out there.
Exactly. It's like, can I be a decoy for like extra resources and someone makes me dinner? I'll be a decoy. Shit. Hey zombies, I'm over here.
Yeah, see, and that's you bring up an interesting point about the zombie apocalypse portion that no one ever talks about. Just how fucking boring it would be. Like it would be so mind-numbingly
Yes.
boring. And like this, it's funny because like I recently rewatched back to back the original Dawn of the Dead and then the remake of Dawn of the Dead, and both of them do a good job of showing this because they show like at first it's like holy shit, we got this home all to ourselves, and they have fun. Like after they clear it out, after they fortify it, after they're hunkered down,
Mm-hmm.
they're having a good old time. In the original, you see them going to the arcade, like they're going and having candlelit dinners, like
Right.
they're raiding the grocery store. They're ice skating. They're
Yeah.
having a good time.
Yeah.
And eventually that boredom creeps in. The reality, the horribleness of their situation creeps in. They start bickering amongst each other. They're just slowly getting more and more anxious. And then that was their downfall. They start flying the chopper, and then the bikers notice that they're flying the chopper and like, hey, there's people in there. They got resources. We need to go get them.
Yeah.
So their boredom leads to their fucking downfall. And then like in the Dawn of the Dead remake, you get that wonderful montage where they're playing games with Andy, like shoot the celebrity lookalikes.
Yeah.
They're doing that. You see Steve fucking and recording himself fucking that lady, and then they're just having a good old time watching TV and all that. But one by one, they start to get bored. They
Yep.
start to get antsy, and then they start that crazy starts to creep in. And it's like that's always the downfall. So I think boredom is the like unspoken killer in zombie apocalypse movies.
Yeah, dude, I think that's a great point. Like that's a really great point. Because I used to watch Dawn of the Dead. It's my favorite zombie movie. I chose a classic, maybe not the best one, but I love the original Dawn of the Dead. It's my favorite. And part of the reason why it's
Fantastic.
my favorite is exactly what you're talking about, is so much of the movie is them kind of enjoying themselves. And you just don't see that a
Mhm.
lot in horror movies where they just take a break and have fun and they make it seem great. And then when they lose this great place that they built, this home they built for themselves in the mall, it makes it all the more tragic. And tragic because the
Right.
characters in the movie lost it, but also because I'm living vicariously through them. And I'm like, oh man, like that mall was so perfect. They had like clothes and furniture and books and all kinds of stuff, And I'm like, oh no,
Mhm.
they lost it. Like, they're never going to find anything so great. Because I'm thinking about, I would love to live in a mall or someplace like that, during a zombie apocalypse. That'd be great. To the point where you know physical bookstores, like brick and mortar bookstores, aren't as common these days as they used to be. And so every time I go to a new like shopping mall, or one I haven't been to in a long time, I always check to see, do they have a bookstore? Because when I was a kid, the malls I went to, in Niagara Falls, there was more than one bookstore. There was
Oh
Walden
yeah.
Books, there was it B. Dalton, sometimes there'd
Mhm.
be a Borders or something similar. And now you go to the mall and there's like no physical bookstores, to the point where the last time that happened, where I went to a new mall, I was looking around at the directory and I'm like, see, I couldn't spend the zombie apocalypse here. There's no Walden Books.
Right.
I'd be bored stiff.
But no, like you brought up the whole thing of like how awful it was that they lost them all. So you understand like how Flyboy overreacts, like because he gets to that
Hmm.
point where he's like, "It's ours, we took it, it's ours." And even though like they're like, we got to lay low, be quiet," he gets a little rowdy. He
Hmm.
wants to fight back because he's like, "You're taking ours. You're taking what we fought for," and he's possessive of it. And it's like that's his downfall. That's how he ends up getting taken out because he's sad that sad that they're taking what they fought for.
Yeah, exactly. And he doesn't want to let it go. But
Hmm.
anyway, do we have any other scenarios we need to hit? We did like the slow shambling. We did the fast running, like Dawn of the Dead remake ones. We did the infection zombies that kind of adds in that like disease contagion aspect. Oh, you know what we should talk about? We should talk about the Return of the Living Dead ones.
I think before we get to that, let's do. There's one other one.
Okay.
And it's not as common. It's more common in video games, and this is a film franchise based on a video game, but the Resident Evil franchise, and there have been other films that have kind of taken a cue out of their book, where it's like the infection, whatever it is that zombified these people, can mutate into some other creature, some other like
Hmm.
life form that is now like some kind of monster. And I think this one is the one that terrifies me the most, because you don't know what to expect. It's like, oh, you're fighting a zombie and suddenly its head explodes and it turns into a giant worm monster. Like, what the fuck is that? Like,
Right?
that that's the type of shit where I think I would just eat a bullet.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. Yeah,
like,
you're not
it's
wrong.
fucking terrifying. Like, I mean, I know, this is kind of breaking my own rule here, talking more about the video games, because I've only seen a couple of the Resident Evil movies. I really didn't like anything past the first movie. I did like the remake, the Welcome to, or was it? I think it was Welcome to Raccoon City. That one I thought was really, really well done, but it was super poorly received. So now they're rebooting it yet again, which just pisses me off. But in the video games, the thing that terrified me the most is, like, the zombies just became the background noise. They were like, okay, they're there. Zombies suck. But then you would always have like some kind of hulking monstrosity that's just chasing you down. Whether it be like the
Mhm.
Tyrant or Mr. X or like Nemesis, there's always something that is trying to kill you in some and it's always a bullet sponge. It can take
Mhm.
ungodly amounts of damage, and they do the same thing in the movie. Like Nemesis in the second movie can take a fucking shitload of punishment and still keep coming. This is the zombie scenario where I think the population would dwindle super fucking fast, like unrealistically fast, because you would have two things. You'd have one, the unstoppable march of the undead that are turning into other monsters and ripping people apart. And then you'd have all the fuckers like me that are just like, nope, opting out. I'm done.
Right? Or yeah, just getting slaughtered wholesale. I don't know that I would opt out. I think I would be trying to escape like until I dropped dead. Like I would just be running and running and running like and just have a fucking heart attack because I like wouldn't ever be able to relax. Like and not just like because I feel anxious like something's going to pop out, but like I literally would never stop running.
It'd be like Forrest Gump, but you ran till you died.
Exactly. It would, it'd be like I don't know. I would feel like a horse that somebody just rode until it dropped dead underneath you. Like that'd be me.
And see, and that leads me to the Return of the Living Dead that you'd mentioned. Again, this is the most terrifying scenario of everything to me, because there's no winning. There's no winning.
No,
You
absolutely
you
not.
you will. It's just, if you look at the first Return of the Living Dead. Now, if we break it down by film, it gets easier. But in the first one, it's just like, yeah, there's no way to win. They're fast, even as a fucking skeleton. They're gonna come after you.
Hmm.
Like just a piece of them will come after you. A fucking head will roll over and bite you.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way to win. There's no way to hurt them. Like, you can chop them apart. The pieces come after you. You can throw acid on them. They're still going to come after you. You burn them. They turn into the gas. The trioxin releases. They create acid rain. They bring back more. So they're and if you get exposed to the gas, you get turned.
Yeah.
So there's like no way to win in that scenario. Once again, I opt out. Um, Part two, though, where electricity kills them, that I think we're right back to Walking Dead Romero territory. It's like, okay, if electricity kills them, just fucking have some live wires and water near you.
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
You're good to go.
You got to survive long enough to get somewhere where you can set up like an electric fence, and then you'll be fine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you win.
I know. And like what's ironic is that it seems like the zombies, especially in the first Return of the Living Dead, like they're just having a good time to the point where I would
Yep.
almost be like, well shit, maybe eternity would be more fun as a zombie. Maybe I should just, join them. Can't beat them, join them. Except for that sequence where, that one like torso zombie is like the pain of
Yes.
being dead. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be in pain forever. No, thank you. I'm a
It's
wuss.
it, and that therein lies the problem, because it's like, I thought the same thing of like the whole, well, just can't beat them, join them. But yeah, you feel yourself rotting, so you're still going to be rotting all the way. And like, the fucking skeleton, man, like the skeleton came back, and it's like, is it still in pain? It has no nerve endings. Can it feel anything?
I know, right? Like, and then like there's like little pieces, like the cut dogs and stuff. Like, it's like
Yeah.
even if you like, put yourself through a wood chipper, would there be like little pieces of you just like alive on the ground, like pulsing? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what the rules are, so I feel like I would. I feel like even if you wanted to opt out, you could just put a bullet in your head because you end up being a pained zombie anyway. So it's like you have to find some way to completely destroy yourself, like become the cloud that creates the acid rain, or like there's no way to avoid the pain of rotting forever.
And that's such a horrifying concept because you're right, like the split dog scene, you hear it panting and like it whines the moment that they touch it,
Hmm.
and then like it like he drops, not, or he picks it up off the ground, it's like gooey and stuck to the ground. He like pulls it up and it whines, and then he starts beating it with the crutch, and it's whimpering the entire, so it can still fucking feel pain. Like that's the thing that other zombie movies, they're just like, oh, they don't feel anything, they're unrelenting, they're constantly coming after you, but they're not, they feel nothing. Whereas in Return of the Living Dead, they're coming at you with a fucking vengeance
Right.
because they're hurting and your brain is the only thing to stop that pain.
Ugh, that's terrible. Yeah, that's terrifying. That's the
That's
worst
fucking
one.
nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we ended on like the worst possible one. Like, I don't know. That's the worst scenario. It doesn't matter what kind of weapon you have. Doesn't matter how smart you are. Doesn't matter like if you can live with other humans or live on your own. Like, it doesn't matter. In the Return of the Living Dead apocalypse, like you have to have a very specific scenario where you can be completely like vaporized, or the rest of eternity is going to be horrible.
Right. Oh, and one thing we forgot to mention about the Walking Dead aspect that is a horrifying concept. In Walking Dead, everyone's already infected. So no
Oh
matter
yeah,
how you die, you're going to come back.
yeah,
So
that's
like
true.
the only way you can make sure you don't come back is by destroying your brain. So like you either eat a bullet or have someone nearby to like stab you in the head after you die,
Yeah. Oh,
because otherwise you're joining them. And that's a horrifying idea too.
yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, yeah. You just if you're gonna take yourself out, just bullet in the brain. Take your own brain out on the way down.
Hmm.
Oh man. But yeah, so this has been kind of fun to kind of think about. Yeah, there's obviously like more scenarios, that I think
Oh
we
yeah.
could come up with, and I'm sure people listening to this are like, yeah, well, what about this movie? And that's fine. But like,
What about all the zombie animal movies like Zombievers? You
no,
couldn't fish if the fish were zombies.
huh? Huh? Oh
Oh
man.
god.
But yeah, I'd definitely be curious to hear what other people have to say. If any of the listeners want to let us know, right? Leave us a comment,
Hmm.
or hit us up on Facebook or something. We can have a chat. But yeah, definitely let us know what you think. Check us out at.
And,
Go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say, and let us know what your favorite zombie movies are. I think that's something that you and I should close on as our favorites. I feel like anyone that's listening to any of the podcasts I'm on know Return of the Living Dead is my all-time favorite movie, but followed closely by the original Romero trilogy. Night,
Hmm.
Dawn, and Day. I've said before, I can't pick a favorite. I love them all equally. It's whatever one I'm currently watching is my favorite one as I'm watching it. And but yeah, Return is definitely my top. It still scares me. The
Hmm.
idea of it still terrifies me. But the original Romero trilogy are comfort food to me. I fucking love those movies.
Yeah, they're awesome. Yeah, like I mentioned, for mine is the original Dawn of the Dead, hands down. Um, I love Night of the Living Dead. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's a hot take. I don't love Day of the Dead. I like it. It's a great movie, but
Hmm.
it's for me, it's nothing compared to Night and Dawn.
Oh
Just
wow.
I don't think it's at the
Okay.
same level. Honestly. Um,
Hmm.
but for me, other than the original Dawn of the Dead, I, I feel like I really like the Dawn of the Dead remake, and that's an unusual circumstance, or that's like not an opinion that you hear that often. I think where I like both the original and the remake really a lot. Like both of those are really
Yeah,
high on my list.
I think that's fair though, because the remake, and again, people shit on remakes. We talk about this all the time. People shit on remakes just to shit on remakes, but
Mhm.
really, when you break that movie down, it's extremely well made.
Yeah,
Like from the top down, effects and acting, script, sound, everything. It's just a solid fucking movie, and it's clearly well thought out. Like they knew they had they had big shoes to fill,
yeah,
and I think they did it well.
yeah, absolutely. But I will say, I think just in terms of my favorites, yeah, as much as I love the Dawn of the Dead remake, my number 2 is Shaun of the Dead. I fucking love Shaun of the Dead so
Oh
much.
God, yes. I I have the theatrical poster sitting next to me on my wall.
Nice, nice. And I will say, if I had to pick, gun to the head, pick any of these movies to where I had to live in that zombie apocalypse, Shaun of the Dead is the one that I'm picking. Because by the end of the movie, the zombies are all like civil servants.
That's a good point. That is a good point because there are several zombie movies. That's a whole genre we didn't even fall into. There are the genre of zombie movies where mankind figures out a way to control them. Like Shaun of the Dead, you have Fido.
Hmm.
I know I'm blanking here, but I know there's more like that where the zombies are kind of like doing their own thing or being controlled by mankind. But
Yep.
yeah, I think you're right. I would want to live in Shaun of the Dead as well if I live in one of the zombie apocalypse movies because it's terrifying, sure, but it's survivable.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And we mostly stuck with movies, but as a comic book fan, I got to bring up comics. There are some really good zombie comics, other than just The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead is great. I will say,
Hmm.
it's a slow burn. If you're a fan of zombie fiction, or just like good comics, period, definitely check out The Walking Dead. It is a ride. Like it's a long haul, I will say. Like you can read the
Hmm.
first handful of storylines, and if you were to wander away and never come back, you'd be good. Like I think you'd be totally happy. Read the first, 3, 4, 5 of the trade paperbacks, but I read it all the way to the end, and it makes some huge jumps, and you did too, right? You read the whole thing, so you know what I'm
Oh
talking
yeah.
about. And I gotta say, it's not my favorite zombie comic, but it is absolutely great. My favorite one, I gotta say, I love Marvel zombies.
Yeah.
I don't normally put superheroes like that high on any favorite comics list, but again, this is also Robert Kirkman, the guy who wrote The
Hmm.
Walking Dead, and he had Sean Phillips do the artwork, who mostly works with Ed Brubaker these days. He does a lot of crime comics, like with Ed Brubaker, like the Criminal series, for example. But yeah, seeing Sean Phillips's artwork, which is similar to what you would see in The Walking Dead, but also with color, lots of heavy black, and I love the way that they draw all the zombified superheroes who. And I love the way that they're personified because they're zombies, but they maintain their intelligence. But it's that same kind of like mental illness we talked about, where they all become evil just immediately, and
Hmm.
that's what makes them so fun, is that they're the same characters but evil. So Spider-Man is hilarious but evil. And
Yep.
it's so good. But yeah, I would just stick with the first one. They did turn it into like a long series and put out a bunch of sequels and things, but the original is the best.
See, now for me, zombie comics, I agree. Walking Dead is fucking amazing. I loved it. I did really really like the comic. I know a lot of people dropped off. I continued to enjoy it right up to the end. I liked where it ended. I thought it was a good place to end. But I think some of the most fun I've had reading zombie comics, I do agree. Marvel Zombies is fucking fantastic. I've loved every Marvel Zombies I've read. Um, but I think the one that surprised me the most that I really fucking loved was Afterlife with Archie.
Oh, that is good. Yeah.
It is and I love. Oh my god, I'm such a fucking whore for Francesco Francovilla's artwork. Like it's so
Hmm.
good. I love his artwork so much. Um, but the other ones that I really enjoyed was, do you remember the Marvel Max? It was just called Zombie. It eventually
Hmm.
led to Simon Garth.
Yeah.
Um, that first story arc, the very first story arc of Zombie,
Hmm.
I thought was such a fantastic read. That first trade is amazing, and I highly recommend that for any zombie fan. And then for any like crazy zombie files out there, it is like sandpaper on the eyes in some of the issues, but I will always hold a candle for Dead World.
I was
I
waiting for you to say it.
fucking
Yeah.
I love that story so damn much.
It is. It's a great story. Yeah, the artwork definitely, is an acquired taste. Absolutely. I do happen to really
Yeah.
like the artwork a lot. I actually like the artwork more than I like the story, but it is a great story. But
See,
yeah,
now some of the artwork, yes, I agree, but like the first couple of issues, it's real scratchy, and it's like it's still I still dig it, but it's
yeah,
like when I show it to people, they're like, ugh. And I'm like,
yeah,
yeah, no, I get it. I get it. Like I personally dig it because I feel like it meshes well with the story, because that story to me feels like a heavy metal album cover come to life.
Oh hell yeah, that's the perfect way to describe it. It's like Eddie from the Iron Maiden, right? Album
Yes.
covers. Yeah, that's so good. That's a great way of putting it. And as somebody who loves early '90s comics, like super nostalgic for the era of like Dark Hawk and Sleepwalker and the New Warriors and the Launcher Image comics, I was a huge fan of Terror Inc. Do you remember that comic? Terror Inc. or Terror
Terror Inc.
Incorporated? Hang on.
I don't remember this. I'm looking it up now.
Is it
Terror Inc.
DJ Chichester? Is that how you pronounce that guy's name? Now I gotta Google it.
Oh my god, I forgot about this.
Yeah, yeah,
Holy crap, memory unlocked.
yeah. Dan
Dude,
Chichester or Chichester? I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Yeah, right. You see what I'm talking about, right?
yeah.
And this was a great character because it was actually created in a non-Marvel superhero comic where he was just like an undead ghoul named Shrek of all things. And then when for whatever reason somehow they got the green light to make a superhero comic out of it, so they put it like right in the Marvel universe, but the artwork is like super dark and moody, very crime noir, very much like Sean Phillips or Charlie Adler. So again, if you like the artwork from The Walking Dead, it's awesome. But this character is really cool because he has he can basically like take off body parts and put them back on, or take other people's body parts and connect them to his body. And he
Yep.
and then you mentioned the Max comics, which made me think about it, because in the early 2000s they relaunched it as just Terror and did a couple of miniseries, and you find out that one of his arms is actually the arm of his like his this woman that he loved back in like the Middle Ages, and you find out that he's been alive for hundreds of years, and he loved this woman so much that he kept her arm forever. So one of his arms he never replaces, but at this point it's all like green and rotten because he's like a living corpse who's constantly replacing his body parts.
Is that why he's got the metal arm
Yeah,
in that?
yeah.
Because I never read the Max stuff.
Yeah, exactly. He has the metal arm to protect his like love's arm so that it doesn't just like rot away completely over the years.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look this up and see if I can find it, because I missed out on the Max stuff. But I do remember this character from the '90s. Like as soon as I pulled it up on Google, I was like, "Holy shit! I forgot about this guy."
Yeah, total like weird like side trail that I even mentioned it. But again, there's a Robert Kirkman connection, because Robert Kirkman, being a fan of these characters too, when Robert Kirkman used to work for Marvel, he did a Marvel team up series, which famously had an issue where Invincible crossed over with Spider-Man in issue 14, but also there was a story arc where Robert Kirkman used a bunch of these early 90s characters that we all loved, like Darkhawk, and he brought Terror back. He was one of the first people to ever kind of bring the character back out of obscurity. And he was on like a super team with like Darkhawk and Sleepwalker and Aranya the Spider Girl. But it was a really fun series.
It's fucking awesome. See, now I got to look some of this stuff up. That seems like some fun reading.
Absolutely. Anyway, so now we've gone down some crazy rabbit trails, as we do, right? We always end up going down,
Oh yeah.
those side trails. But yeah, this has been really fun, Mike. Any last thoughts on zombie movies before we gush on out of here?
No, just if you haven't seen the Romero classics, at least check those out. I mean, I tell everybody, just because they're not only good zombie movies, they're just good movies. Like they're good, like thrillers. Like they're yeah, they have their horror moments, but the human element of like being trapped with these other people and trying to survive, because every one of the stories has that. Night of the Living Dead, trapped in a barn, or
Yeah.
like a farmhouse. Dawn of the Dead, trapped in the mall. Day of the Dead, trapped in a bunker. All three of them have that idea of trying to survive. I mean, hell, even Land of the Dead, trapped in a city, but they're still trapped in the fucking city. Like they can't get out, So that's I don't know, like a theme that runs through those stories that I really like. The idea of being trapped and having the constant onslaught of the threat coming at you. To me, that's really creepy.
Absolutely.
But yeah, definitely check them out.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. I think that is just required homework for horror fans, not to be one of those toxic fans who always has to come up with like rules for other people to make them to make you a good enough fan of the thing that they like. But at the same time, if you're into stuff, you should do your homework. If you're into a certain type of genre, or like me, obviously I'm really into comics, and I end up reading a lot of comics that I don't like just because I'm like, okay, I want to go back and read the classics. I want to do my homework and find out why people hold certain books up high. They put certain books on a pedestal, whether they're my thing or not. It's like, well, sometimes I gotta go check those out. And I think that you should definitely check out at least those first three Romero movies. That Romero trilogy is classic, and so many other things in zombie fiction is either based on it directly, like The Walking Dead, or is inspired by it. And so George Romero is the godfather of zombie movies and zombie fiction in general, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'll say, Mike, let's put a hook right here. I'll say maybe we could do a rental rant where we do the opposite of this, and we talk about all those people who like to say, well, like, oh, well, if they run, they're not real zombies, or if they can go out in the daytime, they're not real vampires. Like we could kind of get into those topics.
Dude. Okay, yes, rental rant about the actually fanboys that gatekeep the rules.
Exactly. Kind of return to our toxic fandom series just a little bit to kind of like, well, we forgot about that part.
Exactly.
So anyway, like I said before, let us know what you think. What are your favorite zombie movies? What do you think is like, good homework for zombie fans to check out? How do you think that you would survive in a zombie apocalypse with these different types of ghouls and creatures? But you can do that by visiting us at Razor Rentals on the socials, razorrentals.com. Send us an email, whatever. But you can check out more podcasters like us, as well as artists, musicians, and other rad people at radpantheon.com. Go check out some of the other projects and help spread the word about rad stuff. So, Mike, you do another podcast as well, The Boogeyman's Closet. What is going on?
Well, right now we are kind of on a pause. There's definitely scheduling issues. There's also, some personal family matters happening. So we want to pause for a while, but I am going to make sure that we have our Friday the 13th episode. I got to figure out how we're pulling that off. I already got the blessing of Susie to go ahead without her, because she has to sit this one out. So we're gonna figure out how we can finish off the Friday the 13th Nightmare on Elm Street franchise with Freddy vs. Jason and have it come out on Friday the 13th.
Hell yeah.
So that will probably be our next release. I do have one other episode that I've already recorded that haven't had a chance to edit yet. So we will have the Sinister episode coming out eventually. I started editing it, and then just work has been horrendous, so it's been taking up most of my time. But of course, there is still Count Creepyhead's Saturday Morning Monster Mash, where 3 grown man children talk about toys and Muppets. So always check that out. That's always a lot of fun. And we did just we've switched over to the recording format that you and I are now using. So I'm going to have to switch over for the long distance Boogeyman Closet episodes. I just haven't downloaded the equipment yet. So
yeah, I gotta say, so far sounds good. Listening to the Count Creepyhead podcast recently, it sounds awesome. So I hope that everyone listening to this episode thinks that we sound good and that this experiment works out. But yeah, definitely check out some of those upcoming episodes. We have just a couple more episodes coming up before our big 100th episode summer blockbuster double feature special.
Oh yeah. Oh my God, it's coming up quick.
It's coming up. I'm super excited about that. Every time we tick a number up, I get more and more excited, which is part of why I was so frustrated that we went most of the month of May this year in 2025 without recording. We just snuck this one in at the very end of the month, and I'm like, I don't like taking such a huge break when I'm trying to get to that 100th episode milestone, but we're going to get there, almost there. Thanks everyone for coming along for the ride. Our next episode will be another improv special, and hopefully you'll come back and listen to that with us. In the meantime, if you had fun with us, visit us on those socials we mentioned, drop us a line, leave a comment, leave a podcast rating, let us know what you think we should gush about next time. And with that, I'm Josh.
I'm Mike.
And we have to return some videotapes.
Raised by Rentals is a member of the Rad Pantheon Network. Visit radpantheon.com to support rad stuff. The theme music is Forbidden Fruit by Velvet Bethany. You can purchase music and learn more at velvetbethany.com.
Any zombies out there? Don't say that.
What?
That.
What?
That. The Z word. Don't say it.
Why not?
Because it's ridiculous.
All right. Are there any out there, though?
Can't see any. Maybe it's not as bad as all that. Oh, no, there they are.